I'm still leaning towards the downside. I still think that the leverage being given out in crypto and the Pepes and so forth, that's not a healthy sign of a market that's bottoming and going to go higher. It's more of a sign of a top. So I'm kind of overall net bearish.
In today's video, Chief Market Strategist of InTheMoneyStocks.com Gareth Soloway tells us all about his latest analysis of the charts as well as his predictions and price targets for Bitcoin. He believes that we could possibly see Bitcoin's low in the coming months. Soloway shares his opinion regarding high inflation rates, the stock market, the crypto market, and the Fed.
Kind of in the camp that if they do announce a pause of sorts, then you'll see the markets initially react to the upside. So you could get that just kind of that sigh of relief. Although I don't think it would last very long. I think maybe it lasts for a couple days or a day only. And then I think reality sets in. I'm sure we were just talking about how the FOMC, Jerome Powell's he's not going to just be super dovish, right? We know that. If he does announce a pause, he's going to say, okay, we're going to pause, but we're going to be still aggressively fighting inflation. We're going to keep rates where they are for X amount of months or years. He's going to make sure, because he doesn't want the markets to go up too much. But I think the initial reaction, if it's a pause, would be a pop in the markets. If he doesn't announce a pause, I think there's expectations built in that he will. So then you have the opposite. If he doesn't announce that pause, you could see a flush in the markets. If he does announce a pause, it's not going to be a clean-cut pause, right? Because, again, he doesn't want the markets to go up. He doesn't want asset prices to inflate again. Everything he's been working towards is bringing asset prices back in, bringing the economy back in so inflation comes under wraps. So if he were to announce a pause with no strings attached, then all of a sudden asset prices inflate again, the whole thing starts all over again. So I think for sure it'll be, okay, we're going to take 1 month to pause. You have the debt ceiling as an issue. You have the banking crisis right now with regionals. I mean, these are the reasons why we're going to pause, but the market, he's going to just make it clear the markets need to prepare that they could go back to hiking if the inflation numbers don't start coming down more. The positions I have on right now are more long the regional banks. I'm playing it from the aspect that the Fed may give a little bit in terms of the pause, and a pause would then be a bullish thing for the regionals to get a bounce. So the regional banks I'm a little bit long on. Again, very risky though. And then I for the most part, I'm just sitting on a few big tech shorts. I got a little short on Apple. I got a little short on the NASDAQ, but where I'm willing to add if we do get the pop that I'm expecting.
How do you take the longs? What, do you go into individual banks and actually just go long individual banks, or is there some kind of regional bank index that you can trade?
Yeah, you definitely don't do. I wouldn't recommend doing the individual banks, because just like with FRC, you would have gotten burned with SBNY, all these other ones. So for me, it's KRE is the regional bank ETF. It's been beaten down ridiculously. The KBE is another banking ETF. And this way, what you do is you spread the risk amongst many banks, where one individual failure is not going to really crush you as much. So you don't get the same crazy upside. Like, you're not going to triple your money, but at the same time, you got to be protective here. With going into a crisis, you don't want to be a cowboy. I think if a pause, that would bounce. I think a lot of other things would bounce as well. It's just going to be a rising tide lifts all boats scenario, at least initially. But I think following that, the market would have a reckoning within a few days of saying, okay, well, the Fed paused, but where is the economy? Where are they going to be keeping interest rates where they are? Because it's not just the pause. The market wants the pause. That's their initial thing. Then they want to hear about how quickly the Fed's going to lower rates. And I don't think that's happening. I think that's a long way off.
What do you think of Bitcoin? What do you think Bitcoin does? Bitcoin's been kind of choppy. It's been at 30,000. It's been at 30,000. It was been down as low as 28,000. It's now hovering at the 28,500. How do you see Bitcoin?
Yeah, so for me with Bitcoin, in terms of the charting here, it's one of those things where you're stuck between two ranges, right? You're stuck between 30,500, which was the high, and this 27,000 level. So you're range bound. The Fed may trigger a break one way or the other. I'm still leaning towards the downside. I still think that the leverage being given out in crypto and the Pepes and so forth, that's not a healthy sign of a market that's bottoming and going to go higher. It's more of a sign of a top. So I'm kind of overall net bearish. But really what you're looking for is either a break of 27,000 or a break of 30,500. So this is going to be fascinating, and we're going to be having the announcement in about 2 minutes, it looks like. But you're right. It's like a double-edged sword. And honestly, I don't know. I wish I could know the answer of which direction Bitcoin's going to go. Is it going to be the risk-on trade? Everything's all right, game on, let's buy Bitcoin and all cryptos? Or is it going to be, the banks are doing better, they're not as risky now, so let's pull money out of Bitcoin and go back into banks? I honestly don't know. All right, guys, we got something going on here. Markets are popping.
25. Fed hikes 25 basis points. Bitcoin is at 28,750. KRE, no real, actually up a little bit. KRE is up a little bit. The Dixie 101, so dropped slightly. So let's see what we know. We know it's 25 basis points. What we need to start understanding now is what else was there in there, because now people start reading the reports. Gareth, what chart are you looking at?
I'm looking at, I'm just following the spiders here, which again, the S&P basically popped and then dropped, and now it's almost unchanged since the announcement. So are they saying, did I read it right, that they're saying that they are open to a pause, but they're still going to unload their balance sheet? They're still going to do other things?
The door opening for a Fed pivot. Now, okay. I wonder if a Fed pivot means a pivot to pause or a pivot to actually start reducing rates. I guess it's to pause. I guess that is what we'd call a Fed pivot at this point, right?
Yeah, I think you're right about that. And I think it's interesting because they still will unload their balance sheet, which is basically a way of them tightening. But the banks, the regionals, are more concerned with the interest rate, right? So it seems like they're throwing a bone by talking about maybe a pause to the banks, even though they're not willing to acknowledge the banking process, the banking crisis. But instead, yep. So interesting.
Inflation. But I think the press is going to start pushing them on recession. What do you think, guys?
Yeah, I think that's the direction that the press will be asking questions on, is that it's pretty clear that they're wanting the markets and the economy to go into recession. And I think they want to get more guidance on what the Fed is willing to tolerate on the recession side.
Why do you think they want the markets in recession? Like, what did the Fed gain by having a market in recession?
I think it just slows down inflation, because again, as you get people to lose jobs, the labor market loosens up. People's pay doesn't have to be increased as much to lure people into working for a company. So it's a lot of, and then people have less money to spend. So it's all kind of into that same mode of getting inflation under control.
Gareth, are you changing any of your positions now that you've seen that it's a 25 bips? Like, has any information here made you want to change any of your positions?
No, nothing yet. You're definitely waiting on the commentary. I'm getting some short ideas locked and loaded just in case we do see a big spike up. I think I'll short into that, but we haven't moved enough for me to initiate any trades yet.
What would you short?
So for me, it's looking at something like an Apple that's already gone sky high. NVIDIA has already pulled back the last few days. The NASDAQ 100, things that basically have run ridiculously. To me, that's where I start looking for kind of a corrective move.
Apple 169.170.
And Apple has earnings tomorrow after the bell, so that'll be big. But if you look at Apple, I mean, it has had just a monster. For the size of that company, the move up from over the last few months has been enormous on the daily chart.